Welcome to channel. Today, we explore story filled with unexpected twists. Please, subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin. I was surprised when my wife, Rachel, requested for permission to cheat on me even once. My first emotion was outrage and disbelief. How could she contemplate such a thing after 24 years of marriage? I understood I needed to make a major choice immediately. I should have seen it coming. Life had seemed too ideal to me, particularly at that point. It was Monday evening and a beautiful spring day. My bottle of Laguna beer was deliciously chilled when I drank it. On the big screen, the Panthers were leading the Hawks 6-3 in the fifth inning. Buddy, my trusty Labrador retriever, sat next to my recliner and generally slept, only flinching slightly as I shouted for the Panthers. There was serenity in the home. The only sounds that disturbed the quiet were the TV and my occasional spurts of excitement. Rachel, with whom I had lived for 24 years, was visiting a neighbor, while my 19-year-old son and 18-year-old daughter went out with friends. It was just myself, the dog, the Panthers, and a box of Laguna in the fridge, along with a few limes I had cut earlier in the day, and I hoped to spend the evening alone. The sound of the door opening and shutting drew my attention, and I assumed Rachel had returned from seeing her friend Erica. However, as I heard someone coming across the house, I realized she had not welcomed me as she always did. I was intrigued, but my focus immediately turned when Panthers coach Derek Owens made a choice that delighted me so much that I startled the dog once more. Rachel was not in a rush to enter the living room. It took her at least 5 minutes. She seemed buried in thought, possibly even apprehensive. Instead of welcoming me with a kiss, she opted to sit on the edge of the couch next to my chair and watch the game on television. I kept an eye on her. "Can we talk for a minute, Brian?" she requested, her voice barely heard over the cacophony of the television. Her remarks instantly drew my attention. "Of course, dear," I said. Her forehead was covered with beads of perspiration, and her breathing was irregular. I worried whether she was unwell or if one of her family members had died. "Could you turn off the TV, Brian?" she pleaded, tightening and uncurling her fists. Interrupting the Panthers game, she recognized the gravity of her plea. It has to be something more serious than merely a health problem. Anxiety tightened my stomach. I snatched the remote control and switched off the television. "What's the matter, dear? You don't look well. Did someone die?" I responded. No one died," she said. "It's just that it's very important to me, and I need to make sure you're fully focused." I nodded softly, worried thoughts swirling through my brain. We gazed at one another for what seemed like an eternity. Her expression was one of dread and even fury. "You know that I love you with all my heart, right? I would never betray you or cheat on you with another man," she was saying. This statement grabbed me by surprise. I nodded softly in answer, feeling my stomach grumble from the food I had eaten earlier and the 2 bottles of beer I had consumed throughout the game. "I'm 41, Brian," she told me, staring into my eyes. "Besides you, I've only had one man in my entire life, and I still feel dizzy from that. My friends even call me a hot babe, but I want to be with another man at least once. I want to experience the excitement of meeting someone new, someone else, before we grow old together." I was astonished. I stopped in place, unable to process what I had heard. It seemed like a high-speed train had sped past my ears, sending me into shock. "It can't be," I cried, leaping out of my seat. "This won't happen while I'm alive." With wide eyes, she observed me pacing back and forth, her look a combination of fear and resolve. I felt like I was having a bad dream. Perhaps I had fallen asleep in my chair and was experiencing a nightmare. "It's not about us, Brian. It's about me and my personal needs," she replied, her voice becoming more strong with each syllable. "For many years, I've been a devoted wife and mother. I've always put family first. But now, for once, I need to focus on myself. I want to feel confident, desirable, and in control of my life." "Don't you think I find you desirable anymore?" I inquired, uncertain of myself. "I show my love for you every day and always try to make you feel welcome. But I still miss that feeling from you. I don't think I'm hiding it well. You seem to think so, and am grateful for that. But my need for approval goes beyond that. I'm still looking for validation from other men for my ego. I enjoy receiving recognition from others, especially from men. The idea that another man wants me is exciting. Don't you feel a sense of pride when a woman looks at you or flirts with you? Even though I like the attention, you are my desired partner, whom I crave even after all this time," I said. But sometimes I can't help but fantasize about how great it would be to go on a date with someone new, to be pampered, to feel wanted in a different way, just for one night. Not for love, but for the sake of burning desire. And then I'd come back to you, my only true love, to be your devoted wife and the mother of your children for the rest of my days. I object, I said, my voice wavering. You are my whole world. The thought of you being with someone else is unbearable to me. I don't want you to be with another man, despite the fact that you constantly profess your love to me. Why don't you prove it by fulfilling my request? She said. I understand that this is an important request, perhaps the biggest one. All I ask is that you think about it because it would mean a lot to me, she told me. But it would be foolish of me to agree to such a thing. I wouldn't even bring it up, I said, my voice rising. Haven't I been a worthy spouse for you and a good mother to our children? Shouldn't that give me some leeway? She complained. You had a lot more partners than I did before we got married. I'm just trying to even the odds a little bit. Actually, we never discussed the number of partners before the wedding. In fact, we only started talking about our shared faith and marital fidelity after we got married. And just so you know, I've only been with 3 women in my entire life, including you, so the list isn't very long, I told you. She admitted, I always thought you had more experience than me. It seems like you know a lot more than I do. I've done a lot of research on this topic. I want to do everything in my power to make you happy, she told me. So you're still totally against it? She inquired. I replied, not only am I categorically against it, but first thing Monday morning, I will contact a lawyer to start the divorce process. But, she faltered, her face blanched with surprise. I paid attention to her response and said, I can see that it was difficult for you to ask this. It speaks to your determination, but I'm also worried that you might try to do this without my knowledge. I no longer believe that you won't do it unless you've already done it and are asking for permission retroactively. I promise I haven't cheated on you, she claimed. I took an oath to stay faithful, and am sticking to it. But when I pushed her further, implying that her request made it difficult to believe she hadn't already crossed the line, her evasive stare revealed her. Do you really want to put our family in danger, even though you say you haven't done anything yet? I questioned, my voice rising. What's the matter with you? She said, her tone strained. If you finally plucked up the courage to ask, then you've been thinking about it for a long time. It also means you already have a specific chosen one, perhaps someone who was involved in this plan from the beginning, I said. She flinched at my words. During lunch and dinner, you've already emotionally betrayed me, I told you. Who is he? She paused, then said without looking at me, I didn't mean anyone in particular. The room was filled with uneasy quiet. I gazed at her for approximately 15 seconds. When our eyes met, her cheeks went a deep scarlet, confirming my worst thoughts. You don't need to know, Brian, she said quietly. Technically, you're right, but I can't help being curious about the person destroying what I thought was a strong marriage. I told you. Either you tell me, or I'll start snitching on all your loved ones, friends, boss, and colleagues. She seemed surprised, her mouth slightly wide in amazement. You're not going to do this, she said. What am I missing? My life is falling apart. My marriage is breaking down. A little embarrassment doesn't bother me. What about my embarrassment? She said. I shrugged and attempted to conceal my smirk. What's his name? I inquired sternly. Kevin Blake, she answered gently. Please, Brian, don't hurt him. I can't promise anything, I responded, grabbing the remote and returning my focus to the television game. She moaned in exasperation, attempting to fight back tears, before getting up from the sofa and heading upstairs to our bedroom. I didn't take my eyes off the Panthers game on the TV, but my head was somewhere else totally. I can't recall what happened in the game after that. I stayed in front of the TV for at least 2 more hours, ignoring the empty sensation that consumed me. Despite my efforts to conceal my feelings from Rachel, I was absolutely saddened. I had no idea she was contemplating wrecking our marriage. Looking back, I realized I should have paid more attention to her developing displeasure. Rachel had become progressively distant over the last 4 months, not just from me, but also from our children. Our daughter, Brianna, was the first to notice this difference. She even questioned whether Rachel and I were having a quarrel. I could not dispute that Rachel and his closeness had faded. Our personal moments used to happen 2 or 3 times a week. Suddenly, they only happened once every 3 weeks, despite my efforts to reignite the flame. I started to think something was wrong. Rachel began receiving calls outside the room, which was rare for her. She also started messaging later at night. When I inquired about it, she blamed it on her friend Erica, who apparently had marital issues with Todd. This explanation grabbed my interest since Todd and Erica lived just 4 homes away, and I hadn't detected any problems with their marriage. I spent much of the weekend thinking about my alternatives. I informed Rachel that I was going to initiate divorce procedures shortly, but first I wanted to properly analyze our marriage and family. It was easy to see why Rachel may be attracted to other guys. We met when we were 24 years old. Even at 41, she had scarcely aged. Though she had acquired some weight after having 2 children, her dazzling youthfulness gave her the illusion of being 33 years old. I frequently pondered how I had gained Rachel's favor in the first place. She was plainly outside of my league. I was tall and charming, but guys like me seldom end up with someone who was voted homecoming queen only a few years before. We met during our second year of biology at the University of Wisconsin. I enjoyed the subject, although Rachel required it to fulfill her science requirement. As a geek, I was delighted to assist her in understanding ideas that she was having difficulty grasping. Rachel surprised me with a passionate kiss when we were studying together in my dorm room at the conclusion of the semester. I answered with similar enthusiasm. "Wow," she exclaimed as we broke apart. "I've been thinking about this for most of the semester. You're not like everyone else, Brian. No matter how hard I tried, you never showed any interest in me. I was interested in you, I confessed. I just didn't realize you felt the same way. I was trying to hide my attraction to you," she said. Soon after, we had a serious relationship. Although I had little expertise in bed, I immediately realized how significant it was to her. Rachel never grumbled and seemed to appreciate my efforts. Unlike the majority of my classmates, who viewed adult videos for enjoyment, I studied them to acquire methods. Rachel realized early on that this information was quite valuable. By the second time we met, I had progressed so much that she collapsed. When she awoke 2 minutes later, she could only murmur, "I love you, Brian." 3 years after graduation, we married. We had a boy 4 years later, followed by a daughter shortly after that. We were financially solid. I worked in information technology, and Rachel went back to her profession as a financial advisor when our youngest kid entered school. Our son was about to begin his first year at Ohio State University in a few months, and our daughter would graduate from high school in 3 years. In other words, our nest was going to become empty. We had been discussing our future plans, including travel, for some months. I'd been in love with this lady for about 26 years. On the one hand, ending a relationship because she requested permission to cheat sounded harsh to me. However, the fact that she even asked created severe issues. I was not naive. I realized that if she was ready to beg for permission to cheat, she would be motivated to do it without my knowledge, especially because she did not consider it treachery, although I did. She already had an emotional relationship with Kevin Blake, and they intended to commit physical adultery together. The issue remained, could I forgive her for this? On Monday morning, I immediately contacted a divorce lawyer and set up an appointment for Monday afternoon. During this time, Rachel did all she could to talk me out of getting divorced. "We haven't taken any steps yet, Brian, and we want," Rachel begged. I asked her whether her hesitation sprang from a genuine wish to avoid divorce or a recognition that it was ethically wrong. Rachel glanced aside and said nothing. "You're still hoping that I'll change my mind and call off the divorce, aren't you?" I was curious. Despite her optimistic attitude, we knew our destiny was determined. I delivered Rachel the divorce papers less than a week after speaking with her lawyer. Living in a no-fault divorce state with comparable wages made resolving divorce-related financial issues pretty simple. Because our children were almost grown, we decided that one parent would not be liable for guardianship or alimony payments. We intended to sell our home and share the money for 1 year, bringing our 24-year marriage to an end. Unfortunately, things did not proceed as well as we had anticipated. Rachel recruited a brilliant lawyer who persuaded the court to arrange for therapy sessions, and maybe more. The counselor, a lady in her 30s, seemed to support Rachel and our children. She questioned why a divorce was required if my wife had not physically committed adultery. I communicated my views to the counselor, stating that I saw Rachel's proposal for an affair as a breach of our marital vows. It had made me lose faith in her as a spouse. Despite my affections for her, I couldn't remain married to someone I no longer trusted. Rachel implored me to reconsider, arguing that she only needed me. However, I made it obvious that I would not consider the concept again. "You seem very resolute in your decision, Mr. Carter," the counselor confidently said during our second session. I will continue to support your decision for divorce and will recommend to the judge that it proceed without any obstacles. Although my opinion doesn't hold legal weight, I feel it's my duty to share it. I believe you're making a serious mistake. It appears that your wife didn't physically cheat on you, and both you and she appear willing to seek counseling to save this long-standing relationship. Your wife is ready to make any necessary changes to preserve your marriage, and her remarks hit a chord with me. My feelings for Rachel were deep, and the choice to divorce her was not taken lightly. Dr. Wilcox, it seems we have different views on this issue, I told him. While you see her renewed promise of loyalty as a concession, I view it as a desperate attempt to regain control of a situation she created. I reminded her of the vows we made to each other 24 years ago, vows she broke with another man. The revelation of our divorce sparked mayhem among our families. The next day, Rachel's mother contacted me. She hurled abuses at me for 15 minutes straight when I picked up the phone. Her normally calm husband ultimately seized the phone from her in an effort to mediate. "Brian, are you crazy?" he said, stunned by the news. "After 24 years of marriage, you're ending a relationship with a woman who, as far as I know, has never physically betrayed you?" When I told my father-in-law what had transpired, I could detect his repressed emotion. He would sometimes say a constrained, "Really?" By the conclusion of our talk, he seemed dejected. After one last apology, he gently hung up the phone. The next week, I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment nearby. Although my daughter elected to remain with Rachel until she departed for college the next year, I thought it was a good idea to have an extra room in case one of the kids wanted to live with me. My children were unhappy about the divorce, but they understood why. A few days after moving into my new house, I had a pleasant phone discussion with my neighbor Todd. I said that Erica, his wife, seemed to be engaged in Rachel's intentions with Kevin Blake. Rachel said that Erica and Todd were experiencing marital issues. I told Todd that I did not believe he was directly engaged in the dissolution of my marriage, but I felt Erica may have had a part. Given Erica and Rachel's intimate friendship, I couldn't help but wonder whether Erica was also engaged with another guy. "Oh, the devil," Todd mumbled into his phone. "So, you're saying I might be dragged into this too? Does your lawyer offer group discounts?" Using social media has advantages and disadvantages. In my instance, one perk was that I could acquire information about Kevin Blake without having to hire a private investigator, which saved me a lot of money. Pierce, who worked with Erica, moved to our local office from Indianapolis around 9 months before my marriage broke up. He had a gorgeous fiancée who was still looking for work in our city, so he often went to visit her on weekends. It turns out he had been attempting to combine his trips with plans to see Rachel, hoping for a nice reception in both locations. I asked Rachel if she knew anything about Pierce's fiancée, but she said it was all in the past. I learned from several sources that Daniel's wedding had been canceled. His fiancée had told him that she was ready to return to her previous partner on a permanent basis. Notably, Daniel's ex-fiancée was the daughter of a rich individual. 3 weeks before the divorce was completed, I reflected on our 23rd wedding anniversary. The sting of loss was palpable, but as I sat alone at a restaurant, I felt more sure that I had made the correct choice. Staying married would have meant continuously being on the lookout for evidence of infidelity. Deep down, I knew I'd done the right thing. I also knew Rachel would ultimately betray me. She loathed losing and considered each loss as a personal defeat that demanded quick attention. I drank my single malt whiskey and went to bed early, silently honoring the occasion alone. However, my peace of mind was destroyed when the phone rang at 1 a.m. It was Rachel phoning. I first chose to ignore it, but because I was already awake, I unwillingly responded. On the other end of the telephone, I could hear her moans and panting. It seemed that she had phoned my number by mistake. I knew she was with her lover, most likely Kevin Blake, because of the familiar noises she made. Despite my initial inclination to hang up, I remained on the line and listened for 2 more minutes until their talk finished. Any last reservations regarding our imminent divorce were erased in that instant. On my lawyer's instruction, I began recording all encounters with Rachel. Feeling uneasy, I contacted my family and recorded the conversation for 3 minutes. After hearing this, my father-in-law immediately hung up. I was convinced that this would put a stop to any such uncomfortable exchanges. Unlike Rachel, I did not seek solace from others until after the divorce was official. It took more than a year before I found myself in bed with another lady. In the meanwhile, my social life slowed. It had been so long since my previous date that I felt entirely disconnected from the current world. This ignorance turned out to be a significant blunder, since the dating scene had changed dramatically. I felt as if I had been taken out of my environment. My hesitancy to date again sprang from a fear of enduring another unpleasant emotional setback. Rachel's treachery had caught me entirely by surprise, and the wound was still open. One notable change I saw since my previous attempt at dating was a shift in women's views. Previously, males were supposed to take the initiative by selecting who to pursue, organizing, and paying for dates. Women nowadays seem to be more confident and outspoken when it comes to dating. I often felt like a relic, focused on the new dating environment, where women often started dates, voiced their thoughts on how the evening should go, and even made financial contributions. Rachel's selfish conduct was not an unusual incident. I discovered that women in today's dating environment wield more influence and are more self-centered. This transition exposed a new dynamic that I struggled to keep track of. Many individuals seem to prioritize their own wants above their partners, which often resulted in self-centered thinking, a tendency I'd been witnessing recently. This propensity became more clear in my own experiences. I will admit that I was delighted to be in close proximity with a young lady. At first, the physical effort seemed overwhelming, and I was concerned that I had overloaded my body. However, when I adapted to the demands, the pleasure became genuinely spectacular. I want to underline that Rachel's ability in bed should not be underestimated. However, by the age of 41, she had lost her youthful vigor and flexibility. I may not have the stamina of a young guy, but I excel at other things in bed. It's vital to understand that I'm not only looking for youthful couples. Since then, I have dated ladies aged 29 to 49. I am open to connections with persons of all ages. I was frequently drawn to ladies my age, with whom I felt at ease after a difficult week. I scheduled an appointment with a new customer from the opposite side of town. Still dressed in a work suit, I decided to stop by the Belle Rose Inn Restaurant's bar. I perched on a high seat and requested a glass of Ardmore Oak single malt. When I arrived, it was already 7 p.m., and about an hour later, the reserved tables were filled by a joyful bunch of bachelorette party guests. Their company consisted of around 15 visitors, all of whom were energetic. Intrigued, I chose to remain and watch the concert while ordering lunch from the bar. The bride-to-be was the focus of attention, a stunning young lady in her mid-20s with long light brown hair and attractive brown eyes. I confess I have a penchant for long hair, so I couldn't help but admire her curls for a few minutes before returning my focus to the rest of the party. I then observed another lady, who seemed to be about 37 years old. Based on her demeanor, she seemed to have been sent to this function as an escort. She was obviously concerned about the younger and less sober attendees. At first look, she seemed fussy in her black skirt, which just reached mid-thigh and seemed to ride up when she sat. She attempted to alter it numerous times in the beginning, but was unsuccessful. I couldn't help smiling. She had really lovely legs and prominent breasts, which were partly visible behind a tight purple silk top. The shirt had a barely detectable V-neck that dropped just enough to display her exquisite complexion, which was accented by an ensemble that seemed to be tailored for a younger audience than the one she typically frequented. It was clear that someone in the group had influenced her decision to wear this outfit, and I quietly welcomed their choice. The ladies seemed to be having a good time, laughing, drinking, and eating snacks. When the orchestra began playing, some of them stood up and danced together. The sight of the ladies dancing appeared to energize the males in the bar, who started to gently approach the women on the dance floor or at the tables, disregarding their escorts. After waiting for 10 minutes and noting that no one approached the escort, I figured it was safe to make my move. With shoulder-length dark brown hair and beautiful green eyes, she reminded me of Jacqueline Bisset in her prime. The lack of a wedding band on her finger was as startling. When I asked her to dance, she flushed pleasantly. She hesitated at first, but ultimately consented, disregarding the snide remarks of the young ladies standing around. I couldn't help but admire her guts as she got up, adjusted her skirt, and grabbed my hand. The first two dances were upbeat, and I mentally thanked my ex-wife for encouraging me to learn to dance. The following dance was slow, and I was pleasantly delighted when she leaned in near me. Her hair caressed my face, and her aroma remained on her white shoulders. I couldn't help but sense the love and connection we had. I thought it was humorous that Kathleen, who typically avoided the attention of younger guys, opened up a spirited discussion with me as we whirled around the dance floor. I found out her name was Dana Lawson. She was the bride's aunt and had accompanied the party to the occasion. Kathleen started to leave after thanking me for the dance, but I gently grabbed her hand and encouraged her to join me at the bar. She first resisted, stating she needed to keep an eye on her daughters, but I promised her that she could still observe them from our seat at the bar. While we watched the girls and spoke, I learned that she was 43 years old and had just divorced after 15 years of marriage. She said that her affluent ex-husband had abandoned her for a younger woman, 29 years old, whom he had married 4 years before. Kathleen also said that the clothing she was wearing was picked by her niece, the bride. She thought it was too juvenile for her usual traditional approach. I informed her that the attire suited her well and may possibly complement her more than she imagined. I complimented her high-heeled shoes, noting that over the years, ID learned how much ladies valued sincere comments on their footwear. "Don't you think I look out of place in this outfit?" she questioned innocently. "Not at all," I said. "Forgive me for being blunt, but you look amazing." If I had loved her pink and blue top before, I was much more impressed by the intense crimson flush that now adorned her cheeks. We chatted for almost 15 minutes. She saw that I wasn't wearing a wedding band and inquired why. When I mentioned that my ex-wife had never physically cheated on me, she seemed bewildered. I went on to say that I maintained conventional beliefs and couldn't trust her after realizing she had emotionally deceived me and was about to escalate the situation. "I believe you can't truly love someone and still want someone else at the same time," I informed you. She nodded carefully and said, "Everyone has their own personal boundaries." Soon later, she returned to the bride's table. About 32 minutes later, I offered her to dance again, and she happily agreed. After our dance, she grabbed my hand and led me back to the table, where other ladies and men were already sitting. Despite some of the younger women's aggressive conduct, I considered the evening a success. I was overjoyed when Kathleen asked me to be her date for her forthcoming wedding in 3 weeks. "I originally planned to go alone," she told us, "but I decided it would be more pleasant for me to be with you." She said that, despite the fact that we had only just met, I had already made connections with many of the other guests who would be attending the wedding. Kathleen stated that she didn't want to feel alone or out of place at the occasion. To comfort her, I eagerly agreed to join her. "Tell me what color your outfit is, and I'll pick a suit to match," I told you. She grinned, leaned forward, and kissed me. A few voices at the end of the table tormented us with fun "oh la la" comments. I smiled, and Kathleen flushed again. I liked seeing her responses. When we weren't dancing, I remained close to Kathleen and kept an eye on the bachelorette party. Some visitors had plainly had too much alcohol, and my parental instincts, developed as the father of a teenage daughter, kicked in. I spotted a young guy attempting to direct one of the tipsy females to the lavatory. When I detected danger, I acted swiftly and discreetly, intercepting him. I was able to prevent the girl from being brought into the men's room. The young guy stared at me. "Let go of my hand, old man," he demanded. "She can take care of herself if she wants to." I let go of his hand, but without warning, seized his head with my other hand and banged it into the wall. The power of the crash broke the walls, leaving him obviously dazed. He seems to recognize that intensifying the fight would not benefit him. The tension in the room dissipated as the customers saw the short argument. Once I was certain that the issue was under control, I gently led the young lady back to the bachelorette celebration. Kathleen and the rest of the party approached the young lady and gently guided her back to the table. I found myself standing in front of the restaurant manager and a few staff. Fearing reprimands, I was astonished when the boss extended his hand and thanked me for assisting the young lady. "The authorities have been notified, and the man has been arrested," he said. "They may ask you to provide a statement about what happened, but I don't think you have anything to worry about. Besides, the drinks for the rest of the evening are on the house. Thanks again. It was a good experience having someone so attentive here tonight. Thank you for being so observant, not just for Aunt Kathleen, but for all of us," said Tanya, the bride-to-be. When I returned to the table, Kathleen questioned how I had been aware of the issue. She said, slightly embarrassed, "I was completely unaware. I was supposed to keep an eye on everyone, but I didn't see anything." I comforted her. It's easy to lose sight of a young girl in a busy bar unless you're a professional security guard or a father. Fathers, well, most of us have what I call fatherly vision. I remained at the table for a while, conversing and exchanging light-hearted jokes with the ladies until they decided to depart. Saying farewell, I softly kissed Kathleen, grateful that her phone number was already recorded in my phone. "Find a more private place next time," one of the females quipped, eliciting amusement from the others. As I watched the women depart the restaurant, I ran my tongue over my lips, relishing the flavor of Kathleen's lipstick. I returned to my position at the bar and ordered another drink. "It looks like you had a good time," the bartender said. I chuckled. "Who would have thought a bachelorette party brought me here tonight? Pour me another glass to celebrate my good fortune before I leave," I joked. Before leaving, I gave Eli, my newfound drinking partner, a substantial $22 tip. Kathleen wore a light blue dress to the wedding, whereas I opted for a dark blue pinstripe suit. We were a sophisticated pair who won the affection of many of her family. Throughout the reception, numerous people approached me to thank me for assisting Savannah, the young lady from the bachelorette party. Apparently, the bride had spent the previous 3 weeks applauding my efforts as if I were a hero. "A hero and a handsome man. What a charming combination," exclaimed Evelyn Carter, Kathleen's sister and the bride's mother, who approached to introduce herself. "I want to thank you for looking after the girls that night and for being such a wonderful partner to my sister during the event." I had the pleasure of meeting Kathleen's 26-year-old daughter Jenna and her fiancé, Trevor. Jenna added, jokingly, "At least one of my parents isn't trying to find a mate on the school playground." She did, however, say that her father would probably not approve of me if I stayed long enough for him to get to know me. Nonetheless, by the conclusion of the reception, I was convinced that Kathleen and I had a bright future together. A month after our initial meeting, I introduced Kathleen to my children. My son instantly welcomed her, but my daughter remained distant, still resentful of my divorce from their mother. While my ex-wife had not physically cheated on me, I emphasized to my children that emotional betrayal was equally destructive. My son, who already had a serious girlfriend, understood my point of view. One evening, we had a lengthy discussion on loyalty and its significance in relationships. Life went on, and I became happier with Kathleen at my side. Kathleen and I retired some years ago. In celebration of our 10th anniversary, we decided to take an Alaskan cruise. Every morning, we had private moments before beginning our day. We shifted our attention from physical to emotional connection as we got older. Our 3 children are now happily married and have 6 beautiful grandkids. Following the divorce, I only saw my ex-wife on special occasions, such as our children's weddings and holidays. She remarried, but then divorced again. Her second husband often suspected her of cheating, which unfortunately came true. One day, he found her in bed with his oldest son from a previous marriage. The guy, filled with wrath, assaulted them both with a baseball bat. The hit on my ex-wife's skull proved deadly. She died in the hospital from cerebral edema. Her second spouse is now serving a 22-year jail term. Rachel's need for intimate relationships with unexpected men wrecked her. Thank you for viewing this compelling tale of love, betrayal, and beginning afresh. What do you think? Was the main character right at dissolving the marriage, or should they have tried harder to make things work? Please share your ideas in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to receive more tales.